So I'm joined by Eha Urbsalu, who is the founder of Viking Beauty Secrets. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
All right, so you have a very interesting background and a story where you grew up in Estonia when it was still part of the former Soviet Union era. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So when I was born, Estonia was part of Soviet Union, and the funny thing is that growing up, being so young, I wasn't really think about what it meant. Meaning, when you're so, as a child growing up, we didn't dream about the free speech and leaving and getting to America. Really, it wasn't part of my plan. I was focused on music studies. I was in a specialist music school, and I guess I was lucky because as I was finishing my high school, they started to do these beauty pageants, which of course in a true Soviet time were not allowed. So I happened to be one of the winners of the first Miss Estonia competition and won a supermodel of Soviet Union. And the next step was, it was Ford Supermodel of the World competition in Los Angeles, where I came I had just turned 18 and I became one of the top four.
So I guess my question for you is, tell me about how your kind of upbringing and your mindset shifted, and how has it been evolving since then?
Well, one of the things that I was, it seemed normal to me when I was growing up, and now being decades here in America and traveling, I come to appreciate is, for example, that like I grew up in having Estonia, having my own garden. We grew our potatoes, our tomatoes. It was all, I guess you call it now, organic, but that was just normal. And even the whole Northern Europe way of living, is very sustainable, and it's always has been. And when I came to America, especially New York, I was just shocked how much waste is being, just people create so much waste. And it's just the garbage. I mean, in New York, it's just on the street. It just seemed incredibly strange to me, and just how much garbage people and waste people produce. And that wasteful attitude, I still see an extremely big difference between, like, New York and Estonia, where I go back home seeing my mom. So that is something that I really feel like I'm glad to see that just now, just recently, I would say the millennials and Generation Z is really leading the way of more like a less wasteful, more appreciating the, you can call it save the planet or whatever you call it, but it is something that is really, I see the good movement. And we, with my company, Viking Beauty Secrets, we really, really are in that very much of sustainability.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about the kind of the generational divide, and what was the impetus in terms of the post-industrial revolution, where to your point, your experience around your home garden, as an example, was very much true for most of the world until the post-industrial revolution, when things needed to be produced on a large scale and same set of units or widgets, which meant that things needed to be processed more chemically in a lab and a factory setting, and there were externalities that were being created as a result of it. So in terms of waste and sustainability issues, that's something that seems like it's fairly dear and to your heart. And how did that transition to you creating your own beauty line called Viking Beauty Secrets?
Well, so when I grew up, I used a lot of these natural products, local berries and all this natural in both as a food component as well as in a skincare. We used a lot of local products. And when I started to travel and be in Los Angeles and New York and all these great places, I realized that my skin started to break out. I literally made it, like, saw a difference between spending time in Northern Europe and like in New York or Los Angeles. And after a while, I started looking into it, and I was very shocked to learn how many chemicals have been used and are still being used in America, not only in food, but also in skincare. So, for example, when European Union has banned 1,300 chemicals from skincare, America has only banned 30, right? It is incredible. So that was part of the reason why I wanted to bring these Nordic natural ingredients to United States. So
Yeah, we've had on one of our shows, we have a number of shows. We had experts that focuses on acne, focuses on beauty products, and some of their general best practices is really to use less products on your face. Ultimately, it comes down to, especially your face as an example, when it comes to acne, there are some good types of bacteria and there are some bad types of bacteria. And it's about feeding the good bacteria versus eliminating the bad bacteria versus just, the kinds of creams that we put on that just wipes out everything. So less in some ways is actually better. And to your point, these chemicals are very much manufactured, and they are purity issues. They are have in some cases toxicity issues, and of course, it also affects the quality and your ability of your skin to absorb and retain water and moisture, as an example. So, how is your product line different? What makes it organic? What makes it natural? What are you doing that's do you bring in some best practices from the Nordic side?
So it starts, of course, with ingredients. We only use the finest Northern European ingredients, but it also, I went extra step with it and made sure that our products are certified organic. Because what happens is that these days, especially, these words of like clean beauty, green, all of this stuff is actually, they're fancy words, it sounds good, but unless you have something to prove, like a certification, just like a USDA does the food certification, then people use, other skincare companies, they use these words very kind of randomly. And for example, when we're certified organic, we have to put every single ingredient in our box. On our box, there's everything is written because it's just the rules. Versus if you're not certified and you don't have regulations, you can choose to put, maybe 10 best ingredients and then kind of leave out some of them. And so I really kind of feel like, see, that's kind of something that makes the consumer feel confident, right? And for example, some of the, which we're not using, but some of the chemicals that are being used in skincare companies right now is like hydroquinone. It's used a lot of in like a skin lightening creams, and people just think like, oh, that's good for my little age spots or freckles or hormonal dark spots or whatever they want to use it for. But unfortunately, it's not written on the skincare boxes that this hydroquinone is completely banned in Europe, in Canada, in Japan, even in some parts of Africa, because it kills while it treats your enlightens or really bleaches your spots. It also kills cells, it kills chromosomes, and it leads to cancer. So this type of it's very dangerous to just, like I said, to put a lot of ingredients, and people just put a lot of skincare and they put a lot of makeup on top of it, and then your skin cannot breathe, and you go outside and there's a pollution. And it's just unfortunate, over years and years and years of that. So I wanted to make sure that our ingredients are super clean. We're completely transparent. You see what's on the box. It is certified organic. So you know that the certification agency has, they have controlled where let's say the berries or like ingredients have been harvested, what is the process, how they have been handled, how they've been, the whole machinery, the whole, our manufacturing plant has been completely checked and is constantly being audited. So, you can trust that process with that certification. And that's why it's so difficult to get. And that's why it is so important, I think.
Now, to give a balanced perspective, is that organic beauty category has grown pretty substantially in the last decade or so, and depending on which subsegment that you're focusing on, beauty, anti-aging, lotions, or whatnot, it's starting to be fairly saturated and crowded. And being certified and being organic and being natural these days is really not sufficient enough of a competitive differentiator. Why do you feel that one, your product is different enough in the marketplace to stand on its own, and two, does it really make a difference, net effect for climate change?
Yes, it does. For example, I feel confident because like our scrub, it has Icelandic volcanic sand in it. So Icelandic volcanic sand is literally the volcanic sand from Iceland. And we also have rowan berries, which are from Northern Europe. They're antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory. So I feel like these ingredients are, first of all, they are really amazing. But secondly, they the Icelandic volcanic sand, first of all, it helps to draw out impurities from your skin. But more importantly for environment, it can go straight from your drain, end up back in the ocean. It is completely sustainable. In comparison, a lot of the scrubs today in America are still using plastic microbeads. Now, plastic microbeads, we know, they go through the drain, they end up in the ocean, the fish, they eat it. I mean, it completely pollutes the environment in the ocean, and not to mention that humans end up eating some of it back. But it's such a small like it's not that difficult to be using organic and natural ingredients. So I really don't know why the skincare companies are not doing it more. But I'm glad to see that some other also smaller indie beauty companies are aiming to offer natural and sustainable skincare. So
Yeah, I think in past interviews, I had brought up the research that shows that a lot of the microplastics that eventually ends up in the oceans actually sometimes originate from machine washing. And when we do our laundries, and a lot of these petroleum derivatives, or things like nylon and things of that nature, those small little elements that becomes microscopic are the things that's just floating around. And we've had Discovery and other types of world adventurers where they have traveled to the most remote parts of the world and they still find microplastics. And as to your point, these microbeads, as an example, is a perfect example of the kinds of things that can easily just travel and be perpetually there in the ecosystem. And the harm is just, we're talking centuries and millenniums in terms of the effects of that. So
yes.
replacing these artificial man-made things with things that's natural, like the volcanic sand, is a good step. Um,
Yes, for example, we also have one of our main ambassadors of Viking Beauty, and she's also a partner in a company, Merle Levand. So she is our kind of leader of cleaning the oceans. And for example, just in November, she did a Guinness Book World Record in swimming 10 kilometers in a mermaid tail without using her arms to bring awareness to the microplastics in the ocean. So it's a very dear cause for us.
Now, practically speaking, I think one of the issues that we face when it comes to organic and natural, truly natural products is that it's around efficacy. So, especially things like anti-aging, for instance, women and men that are using it want to make sure that it's as good as the synthetic ones. And I think that's something that is still yet to be seen. What's your if you had to opine in terms of how is the market receiving in terms of around comparison relative to artificial substitutes, how is the consumer market responding?
Well, I'd like to address what you were saying, so that so you see, people want to see the results right away. Like, for example, if somebody says, "Oh, I want to see my skin tighten right now for this, I don't know, for this date I'm going," right? And this is constantly happening. So what is really important? Is it that they want to be pretty or for this moment, or do they look at the long term, over a decade? Like, for example, my mother is 89 and she looks 20 years younger, and she doesn't use any chemicals. She doesn't put all this, chemicals, and doesn't do, of course, any treatments of Botox or nothing like that. And she looks absolutely beautiful. Now, I am 48 and people tell me that I look much younger. But it's not because I use chemicals. I think that using natural products over time actually gives you much more benefit. Perhaps not immediately. You don't see the immediate. If you put a natural cream or organic cream and then you compare it with some super chemical, maybe the instant lift is not there. But over a few months, over years, it's a huge difference.
That that argument is somewhat like financial planning, where uh, I think people understand the logic and the soundness of long-term planning, but when it comes down to it, it's something that they tend to try and stay away from as long as they can. That goes for estate planning as well. So especially for younger people, where one of the biggest damages to our skin and our bodies really is the sun. When they actually go and sun worship, they're literally damaging their cells permanently. And it's no amount of products is going to heal that or reverse the aging from just burning in the sun. So to your point, I think it long term is valid. The question is, can you really change consumer behavior?
I think we are moving to that direction now. I'm really glad to see that, like I mentioned, millennials, Generation Z, they're really moving towards the natural. They care about organic. They even like the idea of organic products, both in skincare, both on in food, and these two really come together. When I talk about skincare, it is not only what we put on our skin, which is our largest organ, but also how the whole wellness of what we eat. Not to use chemicals in a food products as well. And I think I see them really caring about it. I really am glad to see that.
So how can the listeners and viewers learn more about your product?
Well, our website is vikingbeauty.com, and our Instagram is Viking Beauty Secrets.
So today we've been joined by Eha Urbsalu, founder of Viking Beauty Secrets. Thank you for joining today.
Thank you.